They gave me the posting nobody asked for. Executive Officer of the TFS Arden Threshold, assigned to the Pale Meridian, that thin ribbon of charted space at the outermost edge of everything humanity had mapped, where the star density thinned to almost nothing, and the radio static from deeper, older civilizations pressed in like weather. It was not a prestigious assignment. The Threshold was a dreadnought by classification, which meant she was massive, slow to maneuver, and designed with one purpose that polite company never stated plainly. She had been parked at Meridian Station for 11 months when I came aboard. She had been parked there for another 7 by the time the Thren Conclave showed up. I remember the morning clearly. I always will. Phi 317's station time, and I was running a secondary power audit in the aft engineering bay when Lieutenant Voss patched through on the command channel, calm, because she was always calm, which was why she had the sensor station. Commander Sable, we have inbound contacts, Thren configuration, teen vessels. They're holding the outer marker. I set down the tablet and walked to the lift. The Thren Conclave was not unknown to us. They were known, in the way you know a neighbor you have never directly spoken to, by reputation, by the shape of their ships on long-range charts, by the trade agreements they'd reached with the Vethera and the Sulat Combine. They were a parliamentary collective, 19 member species bound by a common legislative body and a shared principle that contact with any new species required a formal survey sequence. They did not rush things. They did not have to. Their survey fleets operated at the fringes of known space, the way a careful man operates at the edge. Cliff, methodically, respectfully, never in a hurry. They had found us. Or, more precisely, they had found Meridian Station and the vessel sitting beside it. By the time I reached the bridge, Captain Drevant was already in her chair. She was 61 years old, former Deep Space Convoy commander, and she had a quality I had not encountered before or since, a stillness that communicated more than most people's motion. She acknowledged me with a nod and pointed at the tactical display. Teen contacts arranged in a loose crescent formation, holding steady at 200,000 kilometers. Orderly, deliberate. They transmitted the standard conclave survey greeting. 4 minutes ago, Drevant said. Meridian Station has already confirmed receipts and opened channels. The conclave-led vessel is the Tessavar Rendine, their equivalent of diplomatic courier based on the registry Voss pulled. And the other 13? Survey ships. Science platforms, mostly. An armed escort, the conclave's standard protocol for rim contact. Single escort, light armament. She paused. They don't know what they're docked next to. I understood that immediately, and I held it quietly for a moment. Meridian Station was a refueling and communications outpost. Small enough that the Threshold sat alongside it like a hand wrapped around a doorknob. Distance, in a passive scan. You might read her as a large transport or a heavy bulk carrier. Her silhouette was not unusual in isolation. You had to be close, or you had to be actively scanning her, to understand what you were looking at. The Conclave fleet was not actively scanning her. They were following their own protocol. Courtesy pings only, nothing that could be read as aggressive. This was the formal overture of contact. Everyone was behaving exactly as they should. Do we respond? I asked. Meridian's handling the diplomatic layer. Our orders are to hold position and let them lead the introduction. Drevant looked at the display. We are background, Commander. Until we're not. Took my station and watched it unfold. The next 6 hours were something I could only describe as the most careful conversation I had ever observed. Meridian Station's attaché, a man named Sho, who had been doing this kind of work for 30 years, guided the exchange through a translation relay the Conclave had helpfully provided. They were good at this. Unhurried, precise, generous with silence. They offered data on their member species. They received our public registry information with what their translation feed rendered as formal appreciation. At hour 4, the Tessavar Rendine asked if the large vessel adjacent to the station was part of the diplomatic party. Cho said yes. He called the Threshold a fleet asset assigned to the Meridian sector, which was accurate, which said nothing. The Conclave noted this and continued. At hour 6, the escort vessel, a mid-sized armed ship the Conclave called a patrol tender, shifted its position slightly, not aggressively. Adrift, barely measurable. Voss flagged it to me on the secondary channel. No alarm in her voice, just the data. Troll Tender had moved 1,700 kilometers closer to the diplomatic frigate assigned from Meridian Station's own small complement. The little frigate, the one with 4 deck guns and a crew of 40. I watched the targeting display. Troll Tender was running a passive sweep, low intensity, the kind that reads as curiosity rather than fire control. But it was walking its sensor fingers across the frigate's hull, the way you walk your fingers across a stranger's table, looking for something without wanting to be seen looking. Drevant had already seen it. "Comms," she said, and her voice hadn't changed register at all. "Send the Threshold's formal station-keeping broadcast to the Tessavar Rendine. Standard Terran Fleet Protocol, full registry, full classification, full armament manifest." There was a beat of silence on the bridge. "Full armament manifest, Captain. Full manifest and open all gun port covers. All weapons stations, unmute. I want every targeting array live." I understood what she was doing. No threat transmitted, no aggressive maneuver, no raised voice. The Threshold simply became visible. Not what they had assumed she was. What she was. The gun port covers along her flanks ran 260 meters per side. There were 43 primary turret emplacements, 12 secondary arrays, battery that could reduce an unshielded vessel to gas at 30,000 kilometers. When the covers opened, they opened sequentially, not all at once, the way a very large, very calm thing might stretch after a long period of stillness. The targeting arrays cycled up with a sound I could feel in the deck plates, a low harmonic that traveled through the hull and up through the soles of my boots. I watched the conclave sensor returns on the display. Their signals, which had been moving in the steady, measured rhythm of a vessel conducting a routine sweep, went irregular. Not chaotic, just irregular. The way breathing goes irregular when a person's mind is adjusting something fundamental. The patrol tender stopped its sweep. It did not move. It stopped and it held position. And in 3 minutes the Tessavar Rendine transmitted a short message to Meridian Station and to us. The translation took a moment. Cho read it aloud on the shared channel. "They are requesting confirmation of the Threshold's classification. They wish to know if this is standard Terran Fleet protocol at points of contact." Drevant keyed the channel herself. "Yes," she said. "This is standard." Another silence, longer this time, 31 seconds, which I counted because I had nothing else to do with my hands. Then, "The Conclave Survey Fleet thanks the Terran vessel for the transparency. We are updating our registry accordingly." Troll Tender's sensor feed went dark. Not hostile dark, completed dark, finished. It had learned what it needed to, and it was not going to look again. I kept watching the tactical display for another 2 hours. The Conclave fleet held its crescent formation and did not approach further. The diplomatic exchange continued, orderly and considered, Cho and the translation relay. By the end of the shift, the framework for a formal contact protocol had been agreed upon. Tentative, careful, first edge of something that would take years to build. When the Tessavar Rendine transmitted its departure notice, it included a phrase that the translation relay rendered as something between courtesy and candor, that the conclave wished to ensure its legislative body was properly briefed before further contact proceeded. Drevant received this without comment. She closed the gun ports one section at a time, the same unhurried sequence as the opening. The targeting arrays went quiet. The Thresholds settled back into the station-keeping posture she had held for 7 months. I filed the shift report that evening and sat with my coffee going cold on the console, thinking about the patrol tender stopping its sweep, 18 vessels, 1 armed escort light armament, routine survey protocol, 19 species coalition, 3 decades of careful, deliberate contact work, and in the space of a targeting array cycling up, all of that careful deliberation had adjusted course, not because we had fired a shot, not because we had transmitted a single threatening word, because they had looked, finally, at what was actually beside them, and they had done the arithmetic. I wrote 1 line in my personal log before I closed the screen. Some negotiations don't require a negotiator. Only the truth of what you are, held clearly for the other side to see.